Welcome to a Healthy Push podcast. I'm Shannon Jackson, former anxiety sufferer turned adventure mom and anxiety recovery coach. I struggled with anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia for 15 years. And now I help people to push past the stuff that I used to struggle with. Each week, I'll be sharing real and honest conversations along with actionable and practical steps that you can take to help you push past your anxious thoughts, the symptoms, panic, and fears. Welcome. You're right where you're meant to be. Okay, I am sitting down with another Panic to Peace student, and I am just so excited. I love these conversations so much, and I know how valuable they are to actually hear from people and know you're not alone. So, I have a Panic to Peace student, Kristina, with me, and she went through the program over the summer, and I am just really excited for her to be here and for you to get to know her and her to share her story with you. So, Kristina, welcome to a Healthy Push podcast.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm really excited to be here today talking to you. Originally, when you asked me, I was really excited. And then I had second thoughts because I thought, oh boy, am I really going to put myself out there? Because as you know, that vulnerability is something that I struggle with. And then I thought to myself, you know what? If I can do something that makes somebody else not feel so alone, then I definitely will do it.
Uh,
So it didn't take me long to change to go back and forth and then be all in again. So
I'm so glad, and I'm so glad that you recognize that this is so good for all the people listening, but also for yourself. And it is so hard. It's so dang uncomfortable to do these things, but I'm so happy that you're doing this. So let's just start. Can you tell us a little bit about who Kristina is?
sure. Well, I'll be honest, my age, I'm 54. Um, proud of, my 54 years on earth. I'm a mother of three. I'm married, a mother of three. Our youngest is a senior in college this year. Our other two are out of college. Our oldest got married over the summer, and then our is a daughter, and then our other daughter lives out of town. And what else? I originally grew up on the East Coast, and then after I graduated college, I moved to the West Coast. And then my husband's job brought us to the Midwest a little over 20 years ago. And so we've been here for about that long. So I've done my share of moving, and I've just always been a stay-at-home mom. I love to cook. I love to entertain. I've always been the person to say yes to everything. I've always volunteered at school, at my kids' schools for their activities, for, you name it, I've done it. And I don't know, I've always loved to give and to support people.
Mm.
And maybe sometimes I didn't support myself enough. It's what I've come.
Yeah. Sounds so familiar, I think, for all the moms and even dads out there that I look at you, right, and I'm like, 3 kids, and you did a lot, and, like, it's so cool, and, of course, I know a little bit about your story, but I would love to let's start with when did you really notice, like, anxiety being in the picture and it being problematic?
Well, I kind of, looking back, I really recognize that I probably had some anxiety, um, even when I was in elementary school,
Mm,
but nothing that was too much that prevented me from doing things. Like it was never anything that I thought, oh, wow, this is a problem. Um, and then even still in junior high, so I'll say that that's when my parents got divorced, was when I was in junior high. And so probably it started to, you know, rear its head a little bit then. I think just with, things going through, things that I was going through. And then in high school, bouts here and there. But I will say the first time I really thought, oh, wow, I maybe have a problem with it. Or not a problem, but it was, really apparent was when I was in college. I had some a period where I had some really severe anxiety and some panic, and then it kind of went away. But the thing is that I will tell you that looking back, I realized that anytime I had, we've all had, I've heard you talk about it before too, but the big T traumas and little T traumas, and I definitely had my share of little T traumas, whether, friend issues or, my parents' divorce. And the thing with my parents' divorce, I think that really sticks out with me was that my dad left and he kind of abandoned us, not
Mm,
financially, but just he didn't really connect with my sister and myself. And so then, of course, then my mom had her own things that she was dealing with. And so I never had a comfortable place to feel that I could talk about
mm,
my feelings, and it was just never a thing. And so it was always, push it down, push it down.
mm,
And so I think I spent, most of these formative years just pushing things down and not knowing how to deal or express the big feelings I was feeling. And so then, I graduated college and I moved across country. And then I don't remember feeling any, having discomfort or anything, but I just know I just avoided things. It was easier to just suppress things and do anything that I could do to avoid feeling things. And then, fast forward to, meeting my husband, married, having kids. And then I feel like even though I thought I was doing all of these things to be helpful, which, to other people, which is true, I think it was more of avoidance again. I think I
yeah.
was doing all the things. I definitely know that I had high functioning anxiety because I was trying to fill myself and fill my time with all the things to not feel the stuff that I really needed to feel.
Mm,
And then probably when my oldest daughter maybe was a junior in high school, I think big things, we're looking at colleges and all that stuff. And I remember having really bad anxiety again and panic, and I was having panic attacks, driving in my car, things like that. And so the immediate thing was my doctor just put me on meds.
mm,
And yeah, it made the feelings, um the symptoms go away, but it never taught me how to deal with the stuff I was trying to, cover up.
mm,
And then I eventually went off of those. I didn't like the way I felt on them. And that's the thing. It's like, I think if you need to take it, you need to take it. Like, there's never any shame in taking medication or anything. And
yeah.
so me saying that is not because I think that nobody should be on it. I just didn't like the way I felt on it because then I felt the complete opposite. I felt numb. I felt nothing. And that's not, for me, wasn't a good way to go through life either. And so I went off of it. And then I had years, maybe like 7, 8 years without really experiencing big symptoms. I mean, every once in a while I'd have, symptoms. And I was PTO president of our high school that has, 2,000 students in it. And I'd have to get up and speak in front of all these parents and stuff. And so I'd have, normal anxiety that you would think, but because I was an anxiety, sufferer, it maybe was a little bit bigger for me, but I always got through it. But anyways, but about so I went maybe 7 or 8 years without really experiencing it. And then all of a sudden I had big life events coming up. I was planning my daughter's wedding. We were doing a remodel on a home that we have. And I mean, it was good things,
Yeah.
but it was just, I think, well, let me back up a little bit. So when my son was a senior in high school, he's getting ready to graduate and go off to college, and that's when COVID hit. And so
Mm,
my whole world shut down. So all the things I was doing to keep myself high functioning just stopped. And so my anxiety and panic didn't have anywhere to hide anymore.
Yeah.
And it kind of just started to, I think come to a head a little bit. And then when I was doing these other big life event things, like again, good life event experiences, but it really overwhelmed my system. And so it got really intense. And so I remember I was just trying to go to Trader Joe's to get some flowers and I had a panic attack driving in the car.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of set it. Like all of a sudden I just like felt like I regressed a lot. But
Mm.
so, and that was maybe, I don't know, maybe year and a half ago. So that's kind of where it was. But it kind of really transpired into being, I got, I was struggling with some agoraphobia, which I didn't know that that's what it was really until I started following you. So during
Mm.
my struggle, somehow I always think, I'm a firm believer in things happen for a reason. But you showed up on my Instagram feed one day, and I started following you on Instagram, and then I thought, geez, I'm going to start listening to your podcast. And then I started to listen to your podcast. And so that's when I really started to think about, wait, what's going on here with me? So,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, talk about full circle craziness. Like listening to the podcast, making these connections, and now you're sitting here on the podcast.
right, right.
I I hear this so much and it's so wild to me that people, especially students and clients of mine, will say I had no idea that I was maybe struggling with agoraphobia. I just knew like panic attacks,
Mhm.
panic disorder. I didn't really understand that there was this other component to it. And I think when you're able to actually label it and have this knowing of what is going on, it helps you to like be able to name the feelings and the fears and to place them and to say this makes sense. Like this is what I'm experiencing. And that's just so cool when you can do that. But so much of what I'm hearing you say, right, is I was always keeping myself busy. I was always, unknowingly, probably oftentimes distracting myself and suppressing. And like you said, you felt and thought it was, quote, easier to do that because that's sort of what you knew and what was comfortable for you. And going through all these events, even though they were good, our bodies can't differentiate, right? It just says, okay, this is overwhelming. This is stressful. Like, here's some anxiety and you're like, "Okay, I'm just gonna keep doing what I know to do. Like, let me just keep myself busy." And when you can no longer do that, you're like, "Okay, dang. There's a lot here that I now have to actually look at, and I have to actually work through this." So, what brought you to that point that you're like, "All right, I'm gonna, like, sign up for this program. I really feel like I need it."
Well, well, here's the thing. So I feel like I've learned so much from you. Like, and again, and I hear it from other people, like when I hear other people that you interview on your podcast or things that you said in your podcast, that unless you've experienced it, you don't really get it.
Mm,
And so I would have a lot of situations where I felt like I would really isolate myself when I was really in the middle of it because part of the reason why I don't like to be vulnerable about it either is because sometimes I would tell somebody, if I did tell somebody, I'm feeling kind of anxious and people just don't understand. And they say, I
mm,
don't understand why you feel anxious. It's like, well, I don't either. And then you'd start to beat yourself up a little bit because you kind of started to fall into like, well, they're kind of right. What do I have to be anxious
yeah,
about? And it wasn't until you exactly said that your body just doesn't differentiate between good things when you're overwhelmed and necessarily bad things when you're overwhelmed. And so that's when it kind of clicked with me because I had heard you say that. And so the funny thing is that I originally, after I thought, I'm going to be courageous and I'm going to sign up for a couple of the master classes. And I did the master classes, but the thing is that I kept my video off on the master classes because I wasn't quite ready to put myself out there. And then it was just, again, just, really listening to your podcast and feeling supported and thinking, you know what, I'm ready because I don't want to be kind of a prisoner. I
Mm,
think that there's a way to fix the way I'm approaching or the way I feel about my anxiety instead of thinking that it's so bad. I mean, yeah, the feelings that, the symptoms feel bad, but the anxiety itself is not bad. And I think I was doing all the things to try to get rid of my anxiety, because I didn't really want to go on medication, like a daily medication. Now I do have, an emergency medication that I take very sporadically if I feel like I, absolutely need to. But, I was doing, I've always enjoyed meditating and doing things like that, but I was like doing it to try to get rid of my
mm,
anxiety. And so and that just wasn't working. And so I thought, I just need to really change my perspective. And I felt like the panic to peace was the way to do it
mm,
at this point. And so I said, I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna, I waffle back and forth, like again, because it was scary. Like, do I, because you have to do the work too, and
mhm,
so um I thought, yeah, I just I'm going to do it for myself. It's a gift to myself
mm.
to kind of change my perspective and my focus. And so I signed up for Panic to Peace and I turned on the video because I said if I'm going to do it, I got to go all in, and it was probably one of the best decisions I've made because you really were so supportive and so many tools, like you said, to change your focus.
Mm.
And that's really what it is. So now, when I feel symptoms, they're still I'm not saying that I'm not healed, quote unquote,
Yeah.
completely, but it's weird. But I will say panic to peace, the the blessing of it too is that you're in this situation and you're connecting with other people who are going through the same thing and who understand, and it's so important to be able to know that you're not alone,
Mm,
and everybody's journey looks different. I will say that when I first, when we did our first introductions that first day and listening to some other people that were in there, I thought, oh my gosh, like, why am I in here? Like, I feel like I don't have it as bad. Like, I almost felt like
yeah.
I don't know how to put it into words, but I just felt like some of these people have some really tragic stories
Mm,
that would bring tears to your eyes, and I thought, "I don't deserve to be here."
mm.
But then I had to think, "No, I do deserve to be here because my journey maybe it's still painful, but it's just looks a little different than somebody else's, but we're all in the same boat." And so it makes me wanna cry just thinking about it.
Yeah. It's so incredibly powerful to be in a space with so many others who you're like, gosh, finally, like, I feel like people get it. People are actually living this and experiencing it, and you're not alone in that. So many students have said, Shannon, those welcome calls that you have the first week, it was just crazy that I felt like maybe it's not that bad. Maybe, I can actually heal from this, and
Mm.
people take away so many different things, right? But I was so proud of you because I could tell from the very beginning how uncomfortable you were, and you were, like, totally dedicated, committed to it, like, showing up on video every week and, like, engaging and just truly doing it for you, and that's when you're gonna get the most out of anything, right? Like a program, a therapy, anything, like, when you're showing up for you because you really want it for you. And yeah, everyone, right, deserves to be there and holds a place there. And it's just so cool when you can too start to connect with others and you bounce things off of each other and you gain different pieces of wisdom from each other. And like you would share things and I would be like, that was so good. Like it doesn't just come from me, right? That's like the whole awesome part about the group dynamic. But I'm curious, right? Like you've made so many shifts. I know going through the program, you were like, I've got some big stuff coming up and things that are like very anxiety producing. And I'm curious, like, can you speak to that stuff a little bit? Because I know that stuff was hard.
Um, yeah, well, it was, well, so like our daughter's wedding, for example. I mean, it was a great, it was a great thing, but it was overwhelming because until you go through it, I don't know. It's just there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders because you think that you have this expectation that people have expectation of you, and so you want it to be perfect, and you want it to be a reflection, even though it's your daughter's wedding, it's a reflection of you, and it's all good. It was it was just I just tried to just be in the moment as it got closer and just tried to take it all in and just enjoy it and not I think the big thing is that we always talked about anticipatory
Mhm.
anxiety and stuff, and so that can occur with anything. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to a doctor's appointment or whatever. It can be I'm throwing a party for 250 people and so it was good. I'm glad. I think had I not gone through Panic to Peace, and it was still kind of like at the tail end of I think when the course was wrapping up, but I think it just really the whole thing. I think my focus and my perception of everything just changed because I think what I was doing prior to that was I felt like I was beating myself up all the time that why is this, whereas now I might I still meditate every day, but I do it not because I think it's going to get rid of my anxiety. I think I just do it to support myself because it feels good.
Ugh.
And um and so I think what I did was going into these big life events that happened, I just really took the time to not feel guilty about doing the things that made me feel good and that supported me. Whether that was, having a cup of tea or, reading a book. I love reading. I'm not reading like Kierkegaard or anything, just easy reads, but still, it's just a nice way to just calm my mind. And so it, I just changed my focus about how do I just to do things to support myself. And it was
Mhm.
okay if it didn't look perfect, and it was funny because I did, we walked everybody down the aisle and everything. And then right before, the reception started, I did get some anxiety and I had to go take a little breather. And instead of beating myself up over having to go take a breather, I was like, I need to do this. It's okay. It is perfectly okay. It's giving myself permission to have compassion for myself, I think, is the shift. And so I think that's really helped with the big life things, even though they're good. It's just learning to have compassion to myself because I would show that compassion to someone else because that's something that you remind us all the time that if your friend or family member or your child came to you, what would you say to them? And so it's okay to say that to yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly what you would say to them. You wouldn't be harsh with anybody else that was looking for support. So why be harsh, you know, with yourself? So
Yeah. Oh, so many good shifts. I think the perspectives, like the how you changed, how you approached yourself, also the anxiety, like you really were creating that different relationship with it for once. And I could see it actually allowing you to make shifts because I think you we're doing what a lot of people do, what I did for years of I just need the tools and tricks and the hacks and the things to throw at it to get rid of it, to, fix how I'm feeling. And doing that just makes you feel even more anxious and uncomfortable because you just are continuing to push up against it, to
Sure.
suppress it, to
Mhm.
not feel it. And actually looking at the tools and all the things that can be supportive and say, how can they support me? How can they
Right.
support me rather than getting rid of the anxiety? Because
Exactly.
that's not what we can't do that.
Right. I feel like that, like, I agree with you when you say, the more you throw at it to try to get rid of it, you're fighting it and it just makes it worse and it puts you in
Yeah.
a constant spiral. And so I feel once I stopped doing that, um, it really made a difference. So,
Yeah.
but I can go to concerts, I can go to, I can travel, I can get on a plane, I can do all these things, but I still struggle with maybe going to the grocery store by myself or something like that, which doesn't make any sense. And instead of beating myself up over it not making sense, I just I just lean into it.
Yeah.
And I know it will, the other stuff will eventually fall into place. I just, it's just a shift in thinking and approaching and how you treat yourself. So,
Yeah. It's so we always want to like make anxiety logical, right? And when it's not, because it never is, we
mm,
want to tell ourselves a story about what it means about us. And we're crazy, we're weird, there's something wrong with us. Why can't we just do this? This should be easy. And it's like, gosh, anxiety is not logical and nothing about it is. And so if you're trying to make sense of it and you're trying to, make it mean something or like it's just going to make things that much harder. It's this leaning in, right? What you just said, that's so incredibly powerful. And I think going through it too, you practiced so many of the things that I teach that's not just yes, you have to face anxiety, right? You have to do the things that lead to anxiety. You can't avoid, but you were really practicing the facing the anxiety in a healthy way, responding to it in a healthy way, practicing the self compassion, practicing how you actually look at anxiety, vulnerability, like like you were really going in on it. Do you feel like there was some shift, like some point that you reached that actually allowed you to do that? Because I think oftentimes we know what we need to do, but we just don't do it because we're human and it's hard to do the hard stuff.
I really think, to be honest with you, a lot had to do with you and your support. I
Mm,
felt like, and I think in the Panic to Peace, just listening to, some of the most benefit, I mean, every day every session you try to teach kind of a lesson and things like that. And I really liked the Q&As after to listen to people because it kind of gave you the strength to say, "Oh yeah, no, someone else is doing the same thing and I
mm,
get it." And it was almost like, I don't know, it was just like a little nudge that, it's okay, and this is where we struggled and this is where we succeeded, and it was just the nudge. But I'll tell you that the vulnerability part is the has been the most sig- uh, important part for me, because there have been times where I've just said, I'm just going to tell this person that I'm with that, I struggle with anxiety. And once I do that, then it feels like a weight's kind of lifted off my shoulder a little bit. Um, Obviously you have to do it with people that you feel
yeah.
safe with. But I've just been in instances, and it's funny because my husband is super supportive, but he doesn't has never had anxiety or panic or agoraphobia, so he doesn't get it 100%. So
Yeah.
sometimes I say to him, I say, "Gosh, I would never, I was like, you just don't get it. I mean, he's always super supportive, and it's not that I'm saying it like in a bad way, but when we have discussions about it, if something pops up, but it's you haven't had it, so you quite don't understand. And I wouldn't really wish it on anybody to experience it, but you just don't get it unless you've experienced it, because the symptoms are really big and overwhelming and scary. And but I think being vulnerable to tell people, people don't think you're crazy. If I mean, you say that all the time, that the people that want to support you are there to support you, and they're not going to think you're crazy if you tell them that you're, we all have this persona that we want to, put out in the world, and we don't want to see like a notch in that
Mm.
persona, or we're afraid if people see a notch, like they'll think less of you or things like that. And so I think once you can really be okay with being vulnerable, and and not force yourself to do it, but
Yeah.
but when you can do it, it really it's a weight off your shoulders for sure.
Yeah, and it's also right, like, I always tell people too, right? Think of a time that somebody was vulnerable with you, and how did that feel for you? And it's always so cool for me when my friends, my family come to me and they get vulnerable with me. And I'm like, it just feels so good to be able to hold space and not necessarily like fix or even understand, because some of the problems that people come to me with, I don't have any experience with. I don't even honestly know what to say, but that's not what they're looking for. They just
Right.
want to be heard, and they just need that space for you to love them and support them and to just be there. And that's the coolest part about vulnerability, is when you actually allow yourself to go there, you get that support, but also you start to let yourself actually connect with yourself. And I think that's the thing that people miss most, is it's not about opening up to the other person and it having something to do with the other person. It's about you actually allowing yourself to open up and connect with yourself and to admit what's going on and to be with it. And like that's why vulnerability is so hard. Like, I got to open up and I got to be with this. Like, ugh.
Right. I agree. I think that's why it's easier to fill yourself with so much stuff, because you don't have to be vulnerable with yourself. And I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head that that is probably the biggest thing. It's being vulnerable with yourself. And so I feel when I can be vulnerable and open up to someone else, then it gives me permission
Mm,
to see myself and see my truth and be self-accepting.
yeah.
And so that definitely been helpful in this journey. So
Yeah. I love that you're being honest, right? About that you really can't understand it unless you've gone through it. And it's like there are words you can try to put to it, but really that fear, that it's not really even describable. And it's very tough being in that situation where you feel like you just want people to understand and nobody really does. And of course, I think a big part of that is you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And it's not really about people understanding, but it's about people being able to offer you that space that you
mhm.
can just share and feel heard. But this is the great part about the group dynamic, right? Is like you're actually in a group with so many people that truly understand and feel it and are going through it and are experiencing so many amazing wins, and it's motivating and it's inspiring and it like pushes you and like there's just so much goodness. I'm curious, Christina, because I know you've like gone through this journey and it's not been easy. And like you say, I'm not quote healed, but what do you feel like it was sort of the most like the maybe a turning point for you of like, okay, I'm actually changing this relationship with anxiety. I'm not going to continue to, do the same that I've done for quite some time.
I can't really figure out an exact there's not like an exact thing that I
Yeah.
can put my finger on. Um, it's just, gosh, I don't know.
I kind
I
of was
think it was
asking
just,
you a trick question, which
I
you're
know
going to
it
be
kind
like,
of feels like I
Shannon.
should have an answer to it, but I don't. There wasn't like an exact like aha moment kind of thing. It was a gradual thing, but it was, I think this is the thing too, is I read something the other day and it was funny because, I'm technically, an empty nester and stuff like that. And I think part of my anxiety too, going back to, having to fill all the thing. And it was always like, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? It's that control piece.
Mm,
And, and it was not like, what do you want to do next? It was, who do you want to be? And
mm,
I just want to I know what my future looks like. My future looks like, grandchildren and things like that. And I just want to be the best mother I can be, the best spouse I can be, the best, sister, the best daughter. Um, so it was more about who do I want to be? And um and so that was I just don't want to be somebody who feels trapped by something that if I just showed myself a little compassion, I can, like you said, I just shift. And I think it was more that it was more of a gradual thing, but it really was more of, and this is not, obviously I'm on your podcast and this isn't like oh, it's all, praise Shannon, but it
yeah.
was really listening to you and, certain things that you would say in certain podcasts and stuff that would just kind of spark something like, I can do this. I can change the way I look at this. And like I said, so then it just that wrapped up with, who do I want to be? I know I don't want to be this person who's afraid.
Mm.
And so I think that was probably the catalyst. So
Yeah, gosh, I'm so glad that you shared that and arrived at that because that is such a motivator, right? Of like, who do I want to be? And I'm just going to keep taking steps to get there. And like you said, it's gradual and it is. And I kind of asked you a trick question because I think people are thinking and waiting. There's going to be like this sort of magic moment, or there's going to be like
mm,
this aha, and it's just all going to go upward and onward from there. And it just doesn't happen that way. But when you allow for it to be this gradual, and some days will be hard, but when you allow it to be gradual and you keep focused on what you're actually working towards, that's when things like, become easier and actually allow you to feel like, okay, I can actually get here. So I'm curious if somebody is in a place, right, that maybe you are in, or that you were in, I should say, years ago, where you felt like, I don't know, is this ever going to get better? Am I ever going to change my relationship with anxiety? What would you offer to that person who's really struggling right now?
um, I would say, again, have a lot of self compassion. Treat yourself the way you would treat someone else who came to you and said the same thing to you that you're saying to yourself in your own head. And something else that has always, stuck with me is you talking about, celebrate your small
Mm,
wins. And, a win can look different for everybody. A win could be going out your front door to get your mail from your mailbox. It could be going to Costco and making it through Costco without having to run out, because you know what? I've been there where, you know, and so and it's okay. It's not silly. Your wins don't have to be these huge things. I think the more you celebrate the little things, it the bigger the impact is. There were times where, I would come out of, let's just use the Costco example again, where I came out of Costco and I was maybe with my husband and I was like, "Hey, give me a high five." Give me a high five. I made
Yeah.
it through Costco. I know it sounds silly, but I made it through Costco, and so it's not being afraid or feeling silly to celebrate
Mm.
the little things that you can do. I think that would be where I would start because it just seems so overwhelming. And it's like with everything, isn't that life in general? That if you just appreciate the small things, you get big rewards. Like it doesn't have to be big things. It could, so I think that's what I would do. I'd start celebrating yourself and celebrate the small things that you can do.
Oh, I love that. I love that because it's often not the big things. It's not we do the big things and then, okay, the healing is happening. It's in
Right.
the small things and acknowledging and recognizing those quote, little things because those little things are actually the big things. Like, we do so much minimizing, but the healing happens in those small steps. So I love that. I've loved this conversation. I'm just so proud of you, Christina. You've done
Oh,
so much
thanks.
work
I'm
and
proud of
like
myself too. So,
good. I'm so glad to hear
you know,
you say that.
2 months ago, I would have been like, "Oh, I don't know." But, yeah, no, I feel good, always have work to do, but,
Yeah.
it's, there's no pressure. I'm not putting pressure on
Ugh,
myself. So,
so good. All right. Well, thank you, Christina, for coming on and being vulnerable. And I'm so proud of you. And hopefully this encourages some people to get more vulnerable with those they love and trust.
right, I hope so. So, it was my pleasure being here.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of A Healthy Push. If you want more, head on over to ahealthypush.com for the show notes and lots more tips, tools, and inspiration that will support your recovery. And if you're hoping for me to cover a certain topic, be sure to join my Instagram community at A Healthy Push and let me know in the comments what you want to hear next.